First of all, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to join us. My name is Mark Munson. I'm Vice President of Business Development here at Ace Micro, and today's session is entitled Accelerate Your Invoice Process with AI-Powered AP Automation. So excited to present this material to you. We're going to talk all about how making the invoice payment process so much easier, and hope you get a lot out of the content that we're going to share today. So I'm going to go ahead and put myself in presentation mode. All right, fantastic. Hopefully everybody can see my slides now. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We have all attendees muted, just to kind of keep the background noise down. If you do have questions, and I mentioned this a little bit early on, or one of the next bullet points, if you do have questions, there's a questions section in the GoToMeeting. So just enter your questions there, and throughout the session, we'll try to respond to those either in written format, or we may take a little bit of a break in the middle and certainly have time for Q&A at the end. And again, this session is being recorded. Just to let you know, if you want a copy of the recording afterwards, or if you need a copy to share with some of your coworkers, just reach out to me and I'll happily send you a copy after the webinar. So let's start off with a quick survey here. Wanted to ask a couple questions of the audience just to get a better sense of kind of everybody's current situation. So, and just type your responses back into the question section that I referenced earlier in GoToMeeting. So the first question is, do you currently process invoices manually? So if you can just type a response in there. And if you do it manually, about how many days would you say on average it takes to process an invoice? You know, are we talking about, gee, we're able to do it very quickly manually and we can do it in 2 or 3 days? Or no, it's, you know, we're having to send emails out, follow up on emails, check with people, bug people, you know, so how long would you say on average it takes you to process an invoice? Third question, have you ever calculated the cost to process an invoice? Just one invoice. There's a kind of an easy formula that you can go through that'll give you a sense of what that is, but I'm curious if anybody's really just taken a look internally at their own organization at what the cost to process one invoice is. And if you notice down at the bottom, I've got a clip that I actually just found online this morning with current numbers, that it's on average companies spend a little less than $16 per invoice. And companies that have some sort of invoicing automation only spend a little less than $3. So it might be an interesting exercise for you to kind of go through and calculate what you're currently spending to process invoices. And then lastly, you find yourself in situations because it takes so long to process an invoice that you're paying penalties associated with late payments and fees and those types of things. So you can answer those questions for me. I'll give it a second for people to respond. Right, getting all kinds of different options here, or different answers. It looks like we've got a combination of responses here. All right, well, I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Oh, let me turn my phone off here in the background. Always fun doing a live presentation, isn't it? All right, so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenters today. We're very, very pleased to have one of our long-term partners. We've been in a partnership with QuickTag for many, many years. They are, when it comes to AP automation, kind of our go-to, well, they are our go-to partner. We've, again, have several clients that currently use their solution, not only in the GP environment, but also in the BC space. And so we're extremely happy to have them today. From QuickTag, it's going to be Tiffany Allen. She is the director of the channel program. She's going to start us off with a couple PowerPoint slides, and then Michael, we like to affectionately call him MV. He is the director of software development. He'll be doing probably more of the technical lifting when it comes to the presentation today. So with that said, I am going to turn it over to Tiffany first to let her present, and then she'll turn it over to MV, and we can go from there. Thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks for having us today, and we greatly appreciate the opportunity to get in front of your customers here. You set the stage really well. Obviously, AP automation, if you're not looking at it now, it's something worthy of digging into. There's a tremendous amount of cost savings that you can look at. So today we're going to talk about why automate. We'll even go through a customer success story so you guys really can see how AP automation can be leveraged within your organization and what type of benefits you can anticipate leveraging. Now, we're definitely going to span both applications here based on, Ace Micro's customer base. So if you are on Dynamics GP, we've definitely got a solution for you. That's our Quick Payables product. And if you're on Business Central, we do as well. That's simply AP. And I will say it's not too late. The success story that we're going to look at here is really a very recent organization that has began leveraging our Quick Payables solution. That's for Dynamics GP. And their story is they are actually a software organization out of the Midwest that had been looking at our product for many, many years. And it was COVID. They actually were in our pipeline for 3 years. And when COVID came about, they were really handicapped in terms of how they could process those invoices. But they also had some other mantras that were coming through their management team, which was they needed to speed up their month-end close. And they really wanted to, they were a very environmentally conscious company, and they wanted to eliminate paper. So this was a huge initiative for them, and COVID really just warped them, warp speed into their initiative. Well, I guess not warp speed, since they looked at us for about 3 years. As they were evaluating their solutions, one key component for them obviously was COVID. Another is that we're deeply integrated to the Dynamics applications and their ISV solutions. So binary stream MEM was a key factor for them, that we've got an integration there. So if that's something you're leveraging, we certainly can look at that. But again, due to COVID, they needed greater visibility. How were they going to get these invoices reviewed and approved? And also, where were they in the process? In all reality, the finance team at American Software was really taking a lot of heat for not knowing where invoices were, or why are we paying late fees? It was all falling back on them. They may have been emailing, invoices out, and they had a very complex spreadsheet that they were using to track. But with that, they were just seeing long delays in getting invoices approved and a lot of inaccuracies in their coding. So they stepped forward with Quick Payables. They were up and running in 30 days with us. And at the end of the year, we came back to them and said, hey, what benefits have you truly realized? And this is a really exciting one. Mark just highlighted how quickly you can drive down your cost when you leverage automation, and especially automation that's integrated to your ERP. They have defined $100,000 in saving to the finance department. And what that meant was, or the reason they were able to define that so specifically, was they were able to eliminate so many steps in their actual AP invoice process. I'm talking about the capturing of the invoices, the data entry, the back and forth of trying to get invoices approved, getting information back on the coding. They reduced 90% of their steps in the process, which allowed them to actually take an employee that really had some, aggressive career path goals and elevate their position into another department. So they literally redeployed one entire resource, and they also took their AP staff's work week from a 5-day work week to 4. So employee satisfaction in the finance department went through the roof. There was, a new career path defined for one of their long-term employees that really contributed to bottom line savings in the AP department. The other thing that was fantastic about this is they actually won an award that year. They do an annual company party, and the finance department was awarded, operational excellence. They eliminated, they went down to one single printer on an entire floor when they had multiple printers all over the finance team in the past. So not only was it cost savings, but it was obviously operational savings in terms of how quickly they could automate, review, and approve invoices. They went from, it taking days or weeks to get an invoice approved to seconds, minutes, under a day to get invoices approved. And we'll look at that specifically, how that can work for you guys. So obviously in our world today, AP automation is, obviously it's a hot topic these days. And AI, or artificial intelligence, obviously is a really big topic too. ChatGPT is out there. How are you going to leverage AI in your world? So I'm going to zero in on just 3 of these components here today that I think are probably going to be most beneficial for you guys. First and foremost is, obviously, if you are, you're thinking, hey, I can't afford another project. My team is busy enough as it is. I want to assure you that at QuickTag here, we really thrive on ensuring that our solutions are highly configurable, so they're rapid to solution. They are cloud-based solutions. We do have some options for an on-prem if that's your desire. But if you go the cloud path, we're talking days to get your solution up and running. Automating that process and ramping up, or ratcheting down the time it takes to improve those invoices. The other component is we leverage that a smarter, more integrated AI. So how does your team take advantage of AI? You truly can, and you can at an affordable rate. The way that we're doing it here is we obviously leverage the artificial intelligence to capture or to extract information directly off the invoice. We capture it as soon as it comes into our application. Easiest way to get them there is through email, right? We'll capture that invoice, and within 60 seconds, we're extracting information from the invoice. Company information, vendor information, GLs, dimensions if you're on the BC side, purchase order information. And that's huge. And the reason that we're doing that is obviously we're extracting that data, but our integration back to your Dynamics environment allows us to validate information. Do we have this as an approved vendor? Are there receipts on this actual purchase order? So we can truly streamline the process for your AP department. There's not as much of a stare and compare going on because we're doing that validation for you behind the scenes. Now, MV is going to get through this in the actual demonstration for you today, but it's certainly, our product is configurable. So you're going to be able to, if you're processing purchase order invoices, we're going to automate that for you. Non-PO invoices, 100%. We've got workflow configurable, so you can ensure the right person is reviewing and approving. And ultimately, we're always going to create that transaction immediately upon that final stage in workflow in your Dynamics solution. And what that really means is, obviously, again, you're leveraging that AI to extract that data, that AI integrated with your Dynamics solution to validate that data. We're removing those keystrokes for you guys, eliminating the chance for errors and fraud as we're seamlessly creating that transaction. Last component is affordable for all. So I will say one thing: if you've not put anything into place today, good news is because of all these technology advancements that we've had with AI and our integration to your Dynamics front, the cost has really come down significantly in the last 5 years. So if you think you're processing 100 invoices and you can't afford this, you absolutely can. It's worthy of a conversation with Mark and I after the call. Absolutely. MV, you're up. Let's get you, let's show these guys some products.
All right, so yeah, without further ado, this is Simply AP, our Business Central AP automation offering. As Tiffany said, I'm gonna, try not to repeat a lot of what she said, because she did cover a lot of good detail on what we offer, but at the same time, while we go through it, I'll kind of point out some of those things. So invoices, you likely email them in, you can upload them, you can scan them in, all that kind of good stuff. But when they come into the system, prior to hitting this this screen here, this listing of invoices to process, they'll go through that data extraction service that we have, the AI-based machine learning, very intelligent data extraction. So it's going to read the invoice like a human eye would, and it's going to take care of a lot of those typos. It's going to take that information off the invoice, and it's going to validate it against your BC data, and it's going to pre-fill that information for you. So you can see on the screen here, all of this information, none of it's been keyed in. So none of it has had the risk of those typos. This was all pre-filled by our extraction service. The amounts, the dates, the vendor information, the invoice number, the purchase order information, all that kind of good stuff is already done. So as you can see in this type column, we do support both PO and non-PO invoices. Again, as Tiffany mentioned, so if you do have a non-purchase order based invoice flow, we can accommodate that. So your GL coding, your routing for approval, all that kind of good stuff. If you do more of a purchase order oriented invoicing process, we'll meet you there as well. And the nice thing about our purchase order process is that we can do straight through processing. So not only will we pre-fill data, you don't even have that possibility of data entry issues because you don't have to enter any data at all. You won't see the invoice as it comes through if it is a match. And I'll talk to that in a little more detail in a second. So I'm going to go through the purchase order match process here. If you do want a more in-depth demo, you can always contact Tiffany or Mark, and we'll get that scheduled for you, and we'll go into this in a little more detail. But I'm going to go ahead and click this guy down here, and right off the bat, you can see in red in the screen where there are some issues that have been called out by our extraction service. So of course, it's going to do its best effort to pre-fill all of this information up here, vendor info, invoice number, dates, amounts, all that kind of stuff. But it's also going to do a real-time analysis of the invoice total here, as well as the actual purchase order matched amount from within BC. And it's going to tell us that there is a difference. There isn't an issue here. So in this case, if I were to claim this invoice and take a look at it and process it, I can see down here, if I hover over these red exclamation points, the issues that it encountered. So we will tell you in very, very good detail what the problem is per line item. So in this case, obviously, if we look at the invoice on the right, we can see that there was an invoiced quantity of 10. But if I collapse this in our invoice line item grid down here, we're going to show you not only the invoiced information that we extracted, but the purchase order information from within BC and the receiving information equally as important. So this is your three-way match right here. So if you do want to take a look at the non-straight through processing, so you want to validate and verify your invoices as they come through, you can see right here, they're trying to invoice us for 10. Again, in red, we'll show you that issue. We ordered 10, yes, but we only received 9. So the issue may have been in the receiving process. It could have been that they actually did only send 9. So this is where you can call out any problems. You can contact the receiving department, contact the buyer, see what the issue may have been. If you do need to cancel out this invoice and delete it and have the vendor re-invoice, that's great. If not, if you do have, if you want to go ahead and just modify the invoiced amount of 9 and say, you know what, I'll pay the vendor the 9 and we'll get that sorted out later. That's fine too. In this case, you can see that we actually did extract all the line item information, but the issue here is that on this vendor template or this vendor invoice, they actually pushed the freight cost as a line item. So we counted it as a line item. Obviously, we didn't have a line item on the PO to match against that. So it is showing us that there is a $150 cost here that's not matching against anything on the purchase order. So in this case, we would just go ahead and delete this guy from the line items, go ahead and account for it in the GL, at our freight cost here, and we're good to go. So we can also accommodate that. So if you do need to add some shipping costs or whatever you need to do to the GL, you can do that as well. Now, I want to flip to an ideal use case. This is the situation that we really wanted to put a lot of emphasis on in this product. It's our straight through processing feature. Now, if straight through processing was turned on in this demo environment, this invoice would never have even landed here. This invoice would have gone straight through into BC. As you can see, I'm going to go ahead and claim this invoice to process. If I look at the extracted detail that we have from the invoice, I can come down here and see we have a bunch of green check marks. That shows there was no issue. There was no discrepancy between the invoiced amount, both quantity and price, the purchase order amount, and the receiving amount. Again, likewise up here, we can see there was a 0 difference between the invoiced amount and the purchase order matched amount within BC. So we do have that real-time integration with Business Central and the capability to do real-time analysis of the invoices as they arrive against not only the original ordered information, but also the received information from within BC. You don't have to then hop over into another monitor or bring up BC, search for that purchase order, look up those receipts. All that stuff is right here for you to be able to make that informed decision. If you do want to do a stare and compare on this, you definitely can. if you are confident enough in our analysis, which over time I guarantee you will be, you can turn on that straight through processing and not have to worry about that $16 an invoice or you know, whatever that cost may end up being for you. We can push them straight through and get paid. Now, on top of the straight through processing, obviously we don't live in a perfect world, so these invoices are not always going to match exactly, but we do offer the ability to add a variance of support. So if this came in and the difference here, we saw a $300 difference before, but if that were maybe only 2, 3, 4% off the total amount, we can accept a percentage that you configure. So if you're comfortable with that difference being up to 5% of the total, 3% of the total, whatever you're comfortable with, we'll respect that, and likewise, we'll push it straight through to Business Central, even if there is a slight difference. If that 2, 3 cents, couple dollars, again, less than $16, the cost of the invoice processing itself, but we'll go ahead and push it straight through. Now, if that percentage variable amount ends up being against a $500,000 invoice and it ends up being, you know, quite a bit more than a couple dollars, we'll also allow you to put a dollar limit. So as long as this difference is within a certain percentage threshold, while at the same time beneath maybe $15, $25, whatever you're comfortable with, we'll push it straight through into BC. If not, it will land in this queue and show you in detail exactly what that issue was. So even if you have straight through processing turned on, you can have a percentage variance as well. So on top of that, which is also a nice feature. Now, once it goes through into Business Central, let me flip over into BC and I can show you what that looks like. We also obviously support routing for review and approval based on, you know, workflow type. If it is a purchase order based workflow and it is a match, we're not going to require approval, but we will give you the option to route for approval. So if you did want to go ahead and choose someone in this list, this configurable workflow list to route this for approval, you can definitely do that. And then beyond that, we will respect an automated threshold-based approval process as well. So say I routed it to somebody, but they only had the authority to approve up to $2,000. They give their approval, it's going to then route to the next individual in line, and so on and so forth. Once it's been approved, we will automatically create it in Business Central in the purchase invoices screen. So if I go ahead and sort this by newest, I'll grab one of the ones that's been pushed in here. Over here on the right-hand side, Simply AP is where we integrate into. It's an app extension, very light footprint. So I can go ahead and choose an invoice. We'll grab this big 5 video invoice here. If I click view, it should take me back to Simply AP. I'm met with my demo user tutorial steps. So if you did want to take advantage of that, we'll walk you through how to use the system. But so it shows us the invoice, it shows us the line item info, the GLs, any dimension coding that may have been done against this invoice. We do have full support of dimension codes at not only the vendor invoice level, but also the item level. So if you did want to add dimension coding support against the lines themselves, you can do that as well. And we will pre-populate any configured dimensions as well. Comments, you know, if you had any comments throughout the workflow process, and then arguably the most important part is the history. So if I collapse the invoice, we're going to see in excruciating detail every single thing that happened to this invoice, whether the data was modified, whether it was rejected, you know, who worked the invoice, when it arrived. If it did go through that straight through processing, it would have a record here as well, noting that Simply AP did push it straight through into BC. So even those items that were an ideal match and pushed straight through will be auditable. So we're not gonna forget those guys. So that's it, start to finish, the process for PO match and Simply AP. Again, we also support non-purchase order based invoices. So if you do have non-POs, we can accommodate for coding those expenses against the GL as well. We do have full support for the chart of accounts within Simply AP, so you can take a look at all your accounts that you need to account to, but you can also do a type ahead if you want, which makes for a really efficient way of processing non-PO invoices as well. So that's
MV,
about it
great
for the
job
Simply AP.
highlighting Simply AP for Business Central. So the straight through processing there that he was just referencing really would take that, 2.5 days. If it's a match, it's seconds. It would actually never show up in AP's queue. So beautiful option that is available to ensure that you're really eliminating, steps that are unnecessary while you leverage the artificial intelligence. We're going to now switch gears and look at quick payables for Dynamics GP. So here at QuickTag, we've been in the AP automation space for over 25 years. Quick payables was our very first AP automation solution exclusive to Dynamics GP. And I think the one thing that I want to highlight before MV gets started here today, they are two different products, so they look a little different. But the core of what we do here is truly to leverage artificial intelligence and that integration to Dynamics GP to afford you guys the most streamlined invoice process. So a couple things to note here is we also support integrations with Cavallo SalesPad. So if you're doing order processing and you need document management there, you have it all the way through document management and workflows within AP. If you're leveraging binary stream mem, we certainly can support that as well, even Solver. So very deep, rich integrations in our Dynamics GP product. And I'll let MV walk you guys through another invoice automation process here.
All right,
Before
sounds
MV
good.
gets started, I wanted to make one quick comment, if I could, Tiffany.
Sure.
Yeah. So we have a mix of clients on the phone today. Some that are already in Business Central, some that are still on GP. The ones that are in GP, some of them are contemplating making the move to Business Central. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is, even if you're currently in GP and you have invoicing challenges and want to move forward with an automated solution, one of the nice things about QuickTag is you can do so with confidence in GP. And when you're ready to move to Business Central, the migration from the QuickTag's GP solution to the QuickTag's Business Central solution is pretty straightforward. So don't feel like you have to wait and suffer and continue to process invoices manually if you're still in GP and think about going to BC. You can do things now and just know that when it comes time to migrate to BC, the QuickTag is there to support you as well.
100%.
Mark, I really appreciate you highlighting that. It could never be more true. Obviously, people's timelines are, always varying. And I would say take advantage. If you're in GP for an extended period of time, for whatever that reason may be, you love it and you've got a tremendous amount of integrations there, don't wait. You can take advantage of a cost-effective, fully integrated AI solution here today, and we will always be there to support you if and when you move to BC, for sure.
All right, so let's jump into quick payables for GP. So a lot of similarities, as Tiffany mentioned. We do have full AP automation support in the GP world as well. It is going to a little different, but again, still under the same umbrella. This, as Tiffany mentioned, we've been in this space for 15, 20 years now. So, we've been around the block and we've been with GP for quite a while. So we do have several different workflow queue options here. I'm going to stick to the PO process though. This is our payables non-PO invoice process, but we'll go to an intermatch process here. So similar situation, similar approach, emailed in, scanned in, uploaded in, any way you need to get your invoices in. Again, none of this information has been keyed in. Can't stress that enough. This has been through our intelligent extraction service as well. We did pre-populate company info, vendor, invoice information, dates, amounts, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to go and grab this invoice here. It is prefixed with an MV, so we can kind of figure out who's doing what here. But so this Uline invoice has come in against a purchase order. So I'm going to go ahead as the AP user and click on this little pencil guy here to go ahead and edit and process my invoice. Scroll down a little bit and we'll be able to, right off the bat, we're met with our duplicate invoice number verification. So what this does is it's going to analyze the vendor invoice number. And not only is it going to check in GP if this invoice has already been entered, but it's also going to look within Quick Payables itself. So it's going to make sure that it's not already in the invoice automation process, but not yet gone into GP. So it's going to check that, and if it does encounter it, in this case, it found 3 invoices that are in my demo environment that match, it's going to tell you exactly where they are in the process as well. So I'll go ahead and close out of that. We'll go ahead and just add ACE on the end of this to make it unique. But as you can see, a lot of information has already been keyed in. Again, can't say enough about this, that those typos, those data entry issues are going to be a thing of the past. You may have to validate some things here or there depending on your invoices themselves, but over time, rest assured it's going to be that much easier. We did find that vendor, the Uline vendor, we pre-populated a lot of configurations that are specific to them, tax schedule ID. You'll see the taxes down here in the tax summary that have been pre-filled. If you do need to augment those with anything you get, definitely can. We're also going to go ahead and display, similarly to Simply AP, all of the purchase invoice lines to date that have been received. So in this case, we have 200 that have been received against this item. We're looking to invoice against 200 as well at a unit cost of 47 cents. If there are any problems, if there are any inconsistencies there, if maybe this invoice is only against 150 of these guys, we can go ahead and do that. It'll leave those remaining 50 open for any subsequent invoicing. Similarly, if the unit cost is changed, you can go ahead and modify that as well. So a lot of good stuff here. So if you do have a situation where maybe an invoice is a partial invoice against a purchase order, and a few lines show up here that have been received, you can go ahead and delete them as well. If you have a situation where an invoice conversely is actually invoicing across multiple purchase orders, we can support that as well. So in this case, it did find this PO number here, went into GP, again, live integration, retrieved those purchase invoice lines for this vendor, pre-populated. I can also do a PO search if I do need to search for any subsequent purchase orders. So if this invoice not only invoiced against MV2139, but it's also going to invoice against MV234522, I can go ahead and grab that line as well, pull that in too. So a lot of good functionality, flexibility here with regard to PO matching. So if I take a look at this, say it's good to go, it is a match, I can go ahead and just push this straight into GP. Although if I did want to optionally route it around for approval, I can do that similarly as you can in Simply AP. Choose someone from this list, it'll route it around for their review. Likewise, if it does breach their approval threshold, it'll move on to the next individual in line. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, looks good to pay. It's a match. And then I can go ahead and submit this through, actually in this case, we actually have to match our shipment, or match our invoice to a shipment. So I'm gonna go ahead and match that. And we should be good to go here. Let's see. This is we just went through a demo migration here. So you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and not mess with that. Maybe they're messing with something on the demo side. So we'll go straight into GP and show how this invoice would have been created. So if I go into the enter match screen, which is where those purchase order match, three-way match invoices would go into, we integrate into the additional menu here in GP. So similarly, again, to the BC Simply AP use case, that's the fact box on the right-hand side. Here we integrate into the additional menu. So from tag all the way down to about, these are all quick tag options. So we do have quick tag document management support for GP. So if you do want to upload supporting documents against a record within GP, you can definitely do that. With tag, view documents would be viewing those documents that have been attached to a record in GP, whether that be through our invoice automation process, or if it's just an invoice or a document that someone's uploaded against a record, you can view those as well. So I'll go ahead and look up a receipt here that has been pushed in. Let's grab one of Tiffany's batches here. So this is going to show you a transaction that's been created against a purchase order invoice that has been matched against the purchase order. You can see all the line item information. If you wanted to view the distributions, all that kind of good stuff, vendor information. Again, didn't have to type in any of this information at all. It was automatically pre-populated from our extraction service and then pushed into GP for us. So at this point, I can go ahead and view the invoice by clicking View Documents. So right here, we're going to show you the three-way match in our IntelliView, proprietary IntelliView technology. So what this does is when we integrate into GP, we also embed a few queries in our integration. So when you go to view a corresponding invoice against a receiving transaction such as this one, you can definitely see the invoice. So I can go ahead and double click this, it'll bring up my invoice from QuickTag. It's stored in QuickTag. It's not bloating your GP data. This is stored within QuickTag. But at the same time, if I go ahead and close this out, I can see the purchase order. I can see the purchase receiving information as well. So if your process is such that your receiving department also uploads the packing slips or the bills of lading or any other supporting receiving documents, you can see those right here. In this case, it's a packing slip. Likewise, if your purchase order process is such that you have maybe a PO rec form or a purchase quote form or some kind of a document that needs to be approved on the purchase order end, you can upload those against the purchase order as well and see those here alongside the invoice and the receiving information. So that's our IntelliView right there, but at the same time, you can go ahead and see that invoice as well. And that's going to be the three-way match process for invoice automation for GP from QuickTag.
MV, if we've got a little bit extra time, do you mind popping back over to Quick Payables and let's look at a non-purchase order invoice? I think there's some things here that might be really intriguing for our Dynamics GP users on the line. Yeah, what's awesome here is obviously our solutions are configurable. So if you don't leverage those purchase order invoices, you would never see that additional, detail on that left rail menu. But on the non-purchase order invoices, as we do that data extraction, same scenario, we're validating obviously everything but the purchase order information. Let's go ahead and click into one because here I think what's great to highlight is that the benefit of the artificial intelligence and integration here is going to allow us to extract that data, validate it against GP as we've mentioned before. And if we don't have more than an 85% confidence rating in the data that's been extracted, maybe that's the amount or the date, we're going to leave that field blank. So it doesn't mean obviously that artificial intelligence is perfect. It just means that we're going to do our very best to get it right out of the gate. We're going to leverage how you interact with the invoice, learn from that so we do better the next time. But if a field is left blank, that's just the indication that we need AP to do a double check on that, to verify that amount. MV, do you mind clicking into one of the invoices there?
Not at all.
Awesome. So if we click into, perfect example here is you'll obviously see there's a lot of red fields available. Those are required, right? That's what we need to be able to seamlessly create the transaction in Dynamics upon the last stage of approval. But again, if the artificial intelligence, we have a rating on each of these required fields. If it's not a minimum of 85% confident in the data that it extracts, it will leave it blank. You also can obviously override that. You can also do those lookups directly here. And I do love highlighting on that top row, you'll see company, but you'll also see intercompany. We were mentioning that we've got additional integrations to, modules in GP as well as ISV third product. So MV is going to flip the switch to intercompany yes. And we actually now see down below that you're able to query different GLs and distributions unique to a different company. That really, again, is going to streamline the process for you guys, ensuring that you're not having to do a bunch of journal entries, year end, month end to accommodate the multiple companies that you may have there. So that lookup that MV is doing there are the GLs that are unique to that particular company ID. Let's see, any other questions that have cropped up? MV, we can keep screens open and we're happy to bounce around and highlight for you guys any other questions you may have. Mark, have you seen anything in the panel?
No, the panel is pretty quiet, so I don't have any outstanding questions, which just tells me what a great job the two of you did presenting today. So certainly do appreciate it. Bravo, golf clap, right? But I do have a couple kind of questions, comments.
Yeah.
Knowing, we're all either in the middle of audit season and or coming out of audit season. And one of the favorite questions our auditors do is say, okay, do me a favor, pull these invoices and show me all the activity behind them. And it's something that we don't necessarily highlight when we talk about these types of solutions in QuickTag specifically, but the time saving just in the audit to be able to go in and pull invoices, I assume it's got to be incredible.
It is incredible, and there's a few options. First and foremost, all of our solutions here at QuickTag, whether it's simply AP for BC or it's Quick Payables for GP, have an unlimited number of users. So if you want to grant a read-only access to your auditor, you're welcome to do that. We can certainly set them up with read-only access. If that's too much though, that's absolutely fine. And you've got an analyst that's supporting AP during that audit time, they're going to have access. They're able to search either Simply AP or Quick Payables. They can search by date range, they can search by vendors, they can search by amounts, they can search by individual invoice numbers, right? And that means they don't have to be doing that within Dynamics GP or Dynamics BC. They do not have to, your BC license or your GP license does not have to marry up with a Quick Payables Quick Tag license. Unlimited users. So you've got a really robust search engine that comes along with the solution that ensures that you guys are going to rapidly be able to find the particular invoices that the audit trail is, or the auditor is looking for. And you obviously can see all of the details, right? In terms of the audit trail, we date and timestamp everything. So you guys can see historically when that invoice came in, who's tagging that invoice, who's coding that invoice, who reviewed and approved, to ensure that you can meet those compliance and audit requirements.
Perfect. I just think that would be invaluable, especially this time of year when there's so much pressure on you collecting all the information that the auditors are requesting. This just makes this process a little bit easier for folks in the AP department for sure. And then the last thing, and I may have just missed it in the comments, you know, going back in AP automation, you know, it was very expensive, which you touched on. The price has come down dramatically. The technology has increased. The accuracy is spot on. So we see that the price is more affordable for more people, which is one of the beautiful things about technology when it really takes hold. But the thing that still blows my mind is how quickly, and I don't recall you saying it, how quickly you guys can spin up Simply AP on the BC side. I mean, we're talking days,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely. So I kind of wanted to, I was going to take your lead there, knowing that we've got a mixed audience. So Simply AP is our solution. We took everything we've known, obviously, about AP automation in the dynamic space for years, but we did build Simply AP in the cloud for the cloud. It's a configurable product, just like Quick Payables, but because it was infrastructured in the cloud, we really were able to address maybe more of a self-directed, rapid deployment. So on Simply AP, you can be up and running in hours. We have a fantastic success story of a Dynamics GP customer that went to BC and they stumbled for months trying to find a solution that supported both PO and non-PO in the Business Central world. They came to us, and their first call with us, they were processing invoices in under 2 hours. There's 2 connectivity points. There's one with the ERP, so that's the API to access BC. So we just need, Mark or somebody on your tech side to say, hey, this is the API access for Business Central. We connect there, and then we connect to Azure to ensure that we can bring over all of your, existing users. And then it's just a configuration component. How do you want that workflow to work? Do you, if you've got multiple companies, we bring those over, but you can set up those thresholds on the PO processing, that tolerance level right there. 2%, but not to exceed $50. You set those configurations. Then you also say, hey, what does workflow look like? If I've got a trigger workflow, who's going to review it if it exceeds X dollar amount? So all configurable within the application by you, by us. We always assign a customer support manager to support you with that implementation. We also have tutorials directly built into the application to help you do it on your own if you wish. But I will say this is the beautiful part about QuickTag and really the configurable nature of the products, because it's an onboarding process, whether it's Simply AP or Quick Payables. As long as you fit into that configuration model, there is a zero cost onboarding. There are no implementation fees for you guys. So, your price is only based on the number of invoices that you process on an annual basis, but you don't have an upfront cost to get started. So we wanted to ensure that obviously if we've made it that easy for you to configure the solution, it makes 0 sense for there to be a charge. Simply AP, you're gonna be up and running in a few hours. Quick Payables is a couple weeks. Honestly, I would say average time is 3 to 4 weeks to get Quick Payables up and running. we can have it up and running for you in literally less than 10 days. But there is a little bit of project management that goes along with us setting up your workflows. It's not quite as self-service, but we're here to get you up and running in under 30 days. Again, no cost implementations in either category.
Fantastic. So I'm going to take control of the screen here. We've got a couple questions.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take control of the screen and go back into my PowerPoint. So from a Q&A standpoint, we've got two questions out here. The first one is OCR, using OCR to input the invoice into NAV or BC. Is the OCR QuickTag or third-party OCR technology? And I believe it's proprietary to QuickTag, correct?
100%. Yeah, it is. So we actually a few years ago, not to get into too much detail, but we started ground up about 3-4 years ago to do our OCR technology, our extraction service. And in doing that, we came across, we did a lot of diligence on what's out there in the field and where we had come, where we wanted to be. We ran across a company called Sift out of Australia. We worked with them in their technology, and they were doing some really interesting stuff at the line item detail level. So we figured, you know what, we're going to go ahead and acquire you guys, bring you guys on board, take 10 steps forward instead of 1 or 2. And we did that a couple of years ago, and we've been able to integrate their team and their technology within ours, and we've gone leaps and bounds.
And that component, for sure, it's a great question, is really part of the reason that you're able to drive costs down in the AP world these days, right? In the past, I've been doing automation for 15 years in the dynamic space. And, there were many times people would call and say, hey, I'm processing 500 invoices per month. And I'd be like, best of luck to you, but the ROI is really not going to pencil out. We were in a mode of you had to create templates and you had to train the system how to read each vendor's invoice. MV, our solution, is reading it as a human eye would. So it ingests that invoice. And let me tell you how quickly it ingests it. When you hit send or you forward it in, or we'll establish a rule of forward on your AP inbox to bring in the invoices in real time, it's less than 60 seconds that our AI is reading, extracting that data. It reads it like a human eye would, left to right, all the way through the page. It looks for every iteration of invoice number, INV hashtag, INV NUM, every iteration of that to extract the data. And it also gets smarter over time. So, again, the accuracy keeps improving, but also because it's all being done behind the scenes, we're able to drive the cost down and also the time for you guys to be able to leverage the solution, hours on Simply AP and just a few weeks on Quick Payables.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it has come down dramatically. There's no doubt. I remember, gosh, it was more than 6 or 8 years ago that, we talked about just AP workflow and document capture. It wasn't too bad. And as soon as you added OCR capabilities on top of it, it was like, ooh, okay, price just doubled.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you had to have huge volumes to justify it. Right. And I would say, Mark, a great kind of next step coming out of this call, if any of your customers here would like to get an idea of what price looks like, you got to send Mark one piece of intel, guys, how many invoices you process monthly or annually, and we're happy to run those numbers for you. It's real simple, and again, zero onboarding cost.
Yeah, and that was our last question, is around the cost. And as Tiffany mentioned, if you can just send me the invoice volume that you're dealing with on a monthly basis, we can certainly get some pricing back to you. But again, that's just the monthly cost, and that's kind of the all-in cost that gets you up, going, working in the system very, very quickly, and knowing that that's going to be your monthly cost based on that transaction volume, that invoice volume per month.
Correct.
So beyond that, I don't think we have any other questions. So I am going to turn around. I'm going to give everybody about 10 minutes of their life back. But before I do so, I want to just thank everybody so much for taking the time to join us today. We know your time is extremely valuable, and we certainly appreciate you spending it with us. If you have any questions, reach out to me, reach out to Tiffany. We'll be happy to schedule one-on-one conversations, one-on-one demos, get specific pricing for your organization. Anything you need, just let us know. And then lastly, be looking for our next monthly Lunch and Learn event for June. We'll be announcing that in the next week and a half. So we hope you find that to be attractive and can attend that as well. So with that said, thank you again and have a wonderful day.
Mark, one quick ad. As our thank you for joining us, we do have some tumblers for your team. If you can see them in our camera here, we've got these Simply AP tumblers. They're nice and they're giant. They're lovely. All the kids love them. As you send invoice volume to Mark, send your address. We are happy to ship out some Simply AP tumblers. We'd love to see some swag on the finance team's desk. So please, by all means, as a thank you for participating today, let us put a tumbler on your desk.
Forgot about the swag. Sorry about that.
Gotta have some swag.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Please reach out and everybody have a great day.